In his last fight, Luis King Kong Ortiz had a brutal fight with Charles Martin, which even saw him taste the canvas a few times. Then, in his savvy boxing skills, he was able to set him up for an overhand left, then throw a series of brutal combinations, which had Charles Martin stuck between the ropes, wondering what happened. Also in his last fight, his opponent, Andy the Destroyer Ruiz Jr. had an epic battle with Chris Arreola, which saw him too face adversity and then come back in a brutal slugfest with an ebb and flow, which saw both fighters pushing each other until Andy Ruiz was ultimately able to take control of the fight and then push Arreola to his breaking point with quick, fast, sharp, relentless combinations, allowing him to be able to ink out the unanimous decision victory. Now you see the young, hungry contender come face to face with the savvy veteran who may be on his last leg for an epic title eliminator to once again have a chance at the throne. Who will win? The Average Josh Podcast. Subscribe. What up, YouTube? It's me, Josh, from the Average Josh Podcast, coming back at you again with another video. And today, it's going to be a quick video. I'm just going to give you my prediction of the Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz fight and the reason why I think Luis Ortiz will end up upsetting Andy Ruiz. So if you've been watching the heavyweight division for the last couple years, you would have noticed these two fighters. Andy Ruiz, the big, strong American, even though he claims that he's Mexican. He's of Mexican heritage, but we gotta claim him for this American side, man. American, former heavyweight champion who defeated Anthony Joshua. And actually gave Anthony Joshua his first fight before fighting Anthony Joshua's second time, then being thoroughly outboxed. And Luis Ortiz, the Cuban, phenomenal talent, great boxing skills, over 350 amateur fights won. He's just a phenomenal talent who ended up, unfortunately, running into Deontay Wilder's right hand twice, and he has 2 losses on his records, which are 2 knockout losses to Deontay Wilder. Now, also, one thing you have to understand about Luis Ortiz is that he is 43 years old. And in his last fight against Frank Martin, when he was 42 years old, he actually got knocked down twice. And one of those times, he was his legs buckled after receiving just a stiff jab. Now, I'm not going to say that anyone's chinny for being knocked out by Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder puts every person he's ever fought with on the canvas. The only person who was actually able to survive his right hand was Bermane Stiverne during their first fight, and of course Tyson Fury. But even then, if he's able to land it, which almost always able to land it, it does put you down. So I'm not gonna say that you're chinny for being knocked out by Deontay Wilder. But in that Frank Martin fight, when I saw him get knocked down with a stiff jab, when he was kind of had trouble getting off the stool sometimes, it just seemed like his legs were buckling underneath his own weight. It really showed us that the King Kong, Luis Ortiz, he really does have some weaknesses now. Not so much due to his chin, not so much due to his abilities or anything, but due to his age. And then you see Andy Ruiz. Now, Andy Ruiz is still relatively young. He's in his 30s. I don't remember exactly how old he is, but he's in his 30s, so he's a relatively young man. And Andy Ruiz has exceptional hand speed for someone his size. And that's the main reason why Andy Ruiz is such a great fighter. Because just like you learned in simple physics class, force equals mass times acceleration. And when you have a man that big moving his hands that fast and putting that much mass and weight behind his punches, when they land, they do hurt. They really do. But the reason why I believe that Luis Ortiz still has a good chance to win this fight is simply because Luis Ortiz has power himself, and he also has a hell of a lot of skill. He's from that amazing Cuban school of boxing that gives you amazing fighters, where he fights southpaw and where he's very good at using that left hand and finding a home for that left hand and putting guys out. Also, as you saw in the Frank Martin fight, that amateur background he had, where he had all those fights and he's had all these professional fights, it really does give him a certain level of composure that you see with guys who are similar to him that have a really, really good amateur pedigree. Guys like Vasily Lomachenko, guys like Floyd Mayweather, guys like Alexander Usyk. When you see guys like that who have been born and raised, and Tyson Fury, who have been born and raised in the sport and have had a lot of amateur fights and a lot of amateur success, and they've built up these very good boxing instincts over decades and decades of fighting, you find that these guys are very sound defensively. And because they're very sound defensively, when they get hit, when they get in trouble, unless it was kind of like with Deontay Wilder, where Deontay Wilder, just turn Luis Ortiz's lights out, they're able to keep their composure. Even in the heat of fire, even in the heat of exchanges. That's why he was actually almost able to beat Deontay Wilder, or to get Deontay Wilder out of there in the first fight. And Deontay Wilder was almost saved by the bell in that first fight. And I don't mean to talk about Deontay Wilder so much. He's one of my favorite boxers. But, yeah. Luis Ortiz, he's not someone to be played with. I know he's getting old, but the last two things to go when you start to become older are, one, your punching power, and two, the thing that may never leave, your boxing IQ and your boxing instincts. He still very much has them. And when you take a look at the way Luis Ortiz fights versus the way Andy Ruiz fights, you would come to the conclusion that, yeah, Luis Ortiz does have a good chance to win this fight, because Andy Ruiz has a very machismo Mexican fighting style, meaning that he comes in there, he's very active, he throws a high volume of punches, and that his main game plan is to throw those high volume of punches to overwhelm his opponent and to catch his opponent's chin and to really get his opponent out of there. But when you look at someone like Luis Ortiz, this older man who has a whole lot of boxing experience, even though there's a lot of professional boxers who have just been trying to age this man out. No one really wanted to give Luis a chance when he was younger, when he was fresher. He's actually been old the whole time he's been a professional boxer, but when he was younger, they really didn't want to give this man any type of shot. He was much too dangerous. It was much too risk for far too little reward. But then after that Frank Martin fight, you see people coming out the woodworks, calling him out, wanting to fight him, because they think that things are sweet now. He's a little bit older. But when you see a guy like Andy Ruiz who wants to try to overwhelm his opponent by using a bunch of, sorry, my daughter's screaming, by using a bunch of different variations of punches, you find that when you have a guy like Luis Ortiz, like Floyd Mayweather, like Vasily Lomachenko, like Alexander Usyk, who have developed this composure from being in these situations and have developed such high boxing instincts that they don't really have to think too much to be able to react with aggression, effective aggression, during those heated times of exchanging while also being defensively sound. You found that these guys are great counterpunchers, and the guys who are come forward like this too much, like Andy Ruiz, they put them in a position for them to counterpunch and to counter them. And just like, you learn in physics, Sir Isaac Newton's third law, for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when you have a big guy like Andy Ruiz coming forward, and then you have a guy like Luis Ortiz using his boxing instincts to time him perfectly, boom, there's an equal and opposite reaction of force going from Luis Ortiz's left hand straight to Andy Ruiz's head. And I think that's how the fight's going to end. And also, Luis Ortiz is a great combination puncher. great combination puncher. So when you're in those exchanges and he does counter you, if he is able to wobble you a little bit, he's able to capitalize on that by being a great finisher. By being a great finisher and going in there just like he did with Frank Martin, throwing tons of combinations and really overwhelming his opponent the same way that Andy Ruiz wants to do to him. So with that being said, that's how I think the fight's gonna go. And that's how I see Luis Ortiz being victorious in this fight. Now, I'm not overlooking Andy Ruiz. I just think that sometimes when he's overly aggressive, just like in that second Anthony Joshua fight, that he becomes one-dimensional. And also, just like in most of his fights, he gets tagged with a lot of shots because he's willing to make those exchanges. But a 43-year-old Luis Ortiz, even though he's old, is nobody that you want to just exchange shots with. Especially when you're like Andy Ruiz and you can be put down. You know, you don't have like this like granite chin. He has a good chin. His chin isn't bad, but it's not like it's not George Foreman. You know what I mean? Like some guys just have a crazy chin. But you know, that's all I have to say about that. I think that they're going to get in one of those heated exchanges. I think that Luis Ortiz is going to keep his composure. I think that he's going to counter Andy Ruiz. I think that Andy Ruiz is going to get a little bit wobbled. And then I think he's going to capitalize on Andy Ruiz being a little bit wobbled and throwing his combinations. And I think all of that experience that he had in the amateurs, as well as the experience he had in his professional career, will be enough to overcome Andy Ruiz's talent and quick hands. I think that Luis Ortiz's experience, natural talent, and the 65% of his natural athleticism that he has left will beat Andy Ruiz's natural athleticism, Andy Ruiz's talent, and the experience that he has. And that's all I have to say about that. Now, of course, I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong. I could just be throwing that out there. Tomorrow, Luis Ortiz just gets knocked out. Everyone comes back here and laughs at me. But that's fine. Because at the end of the day, I want to build a boxing community around this channel where we can talk about fights that we're interested in. Because the mainstream media, a lot of the times, just ignores anyone who isn't named Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. They ignore everybody else. Well, they give Errol Spence Jr. some love. They give Terrence Crawford some love. They give Gervonta Davis some love. Ryan Garcia some love. But for the majority of the fighters, the majority of the great fighters, the mainstream media doesn't give them any love. There's not really a lot of places where you can really hear about the boxing news other than the internet. So I think that's why, you know, there's good to have places like this. So what I just want you to do is, if you think that I'm wrong, if you think that I'm an idiot, if it comes back and that I am completely wrong, just leave a comment down at the bottom of the video and we can discuss it. But whether I'm right or I'm wrong, I have fun talking about it. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm out.